In 1974, the world of progressive rock felt a sudden cold snap. Robert Fripp, the architect of King Crimson, put out a statement that didn't just sting. It felt like a door slamming shut in a quiet room.
I don't think many people, nice, ordinary people, that aren't actually involved in a direct way with the record industry realize how appalling it is.
It was a short statement and it was blunt. It said that the band was finished, quote, forever and ever. Not just a break and not for some solo project side quest. It was dead. See, the timing made no sense to anyone on the outside. They had just put out Red. It was heavy and it was a brilliant record. And it was arguably the best thing they'd ever done.
He said, well, why don't you carry on without me? And I said, well, I don't think we could actually do that. And our management company weren't very keen on that. I mean, to go on without Robert was a little bit dangerous, you know.
But Fripp decided to walk away. He just left it all on the table. Now, the official story usually talks about this spiritual journey of his, or just being tired of the road. And sure, that's the part of it. But if you look closer at that situation, there's much grittier, more frustrating reason sitting in the shadows. It was all about the money. Specifically, the money Fripp believed he and his friends were never actually getting paid. When I went to Argentina, I was told Crimson were second to the Beatles there. I didn't know, because I never got any royalties. Think about how that must have felt. You spent months in a dim, cigarette-stained studio. You sweat every note of In the Court of the Crimson King album. You build a legacy. And then you realize you don't even own the keys to the house that you built. In other words, I had to assign them my rights so they could give me royalties. This was a lie. But then, King Crimson did what everyone else did. They handed the keys to the management. In this case, EG Management.
So we stuck two fingers up at Richard Armitage and Noel Gay and set up EG. And he said, look, we'll do a 70-30 split. A 70-30 split of the costs and all the expenses, whether it be staging, touring, whatever it is, and all the profits. So we get 30%, band gets 70%, which was pretty novel in those days.
These guys ran the business, handled the publishing, and signed the checks.
And I remember David and I, we'd signed, you know, we got the $100,000, we jumped in the lake in Central Park and we were off and running, you know, this was it.
But over time, the math stopped adding up for Fripp.
It's a big subject, but it's not one that I was ever afraid of. I was always interested in it because I'm so old that we came from an amateur business where, you know, the accountants didn't know how to account. The managers were making it up as they went along and taking too much money for it. The musicians didn't care about anything. And broadly, there was always going to be more money tomorrow than there was today. So you didn't really care very much.
He started to feel like the people making the music were being bled dry by the people managing it. Mr. Sam Elder, a chartered accountant, looked me in the eyes and lied. It wasn't just a hunch, it was a slow burning realization that the contracts they'd signed as kids were basically golden handcuffs. But here's the thing about Robert Fripp. He is not just a regular guitar player. He is a pretty meticulous guy.
Those among you might say, but if the artist is paid to make the record and done the work, doesn't it belong to the artist? And the answer is no. And you say, why not? And the answer is it's company policy to own the copyrights of the records.
He's the kind of guy who treats a legal dispute with the same terrifying discipline he used to practice his guitar. When he realized that this system was broken, he didn't just complain.
So you could say, well, how much of the 450 million from the records made and paid by Geffen artists did the artists get? And the answer is nothing whatsoever. And you might say, isn't this inequitable? And the answer is yes. It is a major disgrace.
He decided to starve that beast. If the industry was going to profit off his work while shortchanging the creators, he simply wouldn't give them anything new to sell.
Just put 3 years of your life into, and that you're quite happy with, just thrown out of the window.
Walking away from King Crimson in '74 wasn't just a burnout move, it was a cold, calculated strike.
Having to chase down royalties,
Yeah, sure.
were due to you, right?
Sure. The music business is a bit like Hotel California. You can tell people you've checked out, but you can never leave. It's, it's always on your desk. I could sit down today and find $500 that somebody owes me somewhere.
It meant leaving the tours, the fame, and the income behind to protect what was left of his dignity. What followed wasn't some quiet retirement, it was a war. For years, Fripp hunted down unpaid royalties like a man possessed. The dispute is about E.G. selling the catalog to Virgin and the publishing company to EMI. I felt a deep sense of personal violation. He dug through boxes of old paperwork, tracked every penny, and eventually dragged E.G. management into a brutal legal fight in the 80s.
From an Argentinian jukebox, through a Peruvian promoter, back to an European collection agency, to my house, that's a long way. And of course, every time someone takes a slice out of that, so, your $10 it started with ends up at 50 cents for me.
It wasn't flashy, it was a slow, grinding process of keeping records and refusing to back down. He wasn't the only one feeling the weight of it either.
I think at an early age, we all realized that the guy who wrote the song was an important guy. Didn't quite figure out why, but it's the reason Mick Jagger got in the Rolls Royce and Charlie Watts got in the van.
Bill Bruford and John Wetton, monsters of their own craft, they had similar stories. They also felt same sting of missing credit and disappearing cash. But Fripp was the one who stayed in the trenches. He became a living warning for the entire prog scene. You can be a genius, you can sell out stadiums, and you can still end up with nothing if you don't watch the ink on the page. Eventually the dust settled, Fripp got control back. He clawed his music out of the hands of the suits and brought it home. But think about what costs that has. Some of the greatest albums ever recorded, Lark, Stones in Aspic and Red, were basically generating wealth for people who didn't play a single note, while the creator had to spend a decade fighting just to get a fair shake. Now, when Fripp finally brought the band back in 1981, things were different. There was no more trusting the management. King Crimson is on the whole an abstemious organization. Money is consumed for the creation of music and music only. It's not consumed for any other reason. He ran the business side with an iron grip. He'd learned the hard way, the expensive way, what happens when you let someone else hold the pen. So when you hear that famous quote about King Crimson being over forever and ever, don't just hear a tired musician. Hear a man who looked at the ledger, saw he was being robbed, and decided to burn the whole thing down just to save the ashes. He got the band back for sure, but it took walking away at his absolute peak to do that. Just think about how much sacrifice that was. He had to stop being a musician just to afford to be one again. Thank you for watching, have a great day and see you in the next one.